Thank you to the Southwest High School Mariachi Group and Ballet Folklorica under the direction of Bruce Gonzalez. Let's give him a nice round of applause. Good morning, everyone. I'm Shelley Stevens Stidham. I'm the Director of the Community Health Impact at Parkland Hospital in Dallas. On behalf of the Lifesavers Planning Committee, welcome to the 36th Annual Lifesavers Conference on Highway Safety Priorities. And it gives me great pleasure to be able to say this: welcome to my home state of Texas. So in the spirit of full disclosure, I'm not a native Texan. And when I moved here 10 years ago, I thought, boy, those Texas people have big egos. I quickly understood that it's well-deserved. We do things big here in Texas, and that goes for Lifesavers. Over the next 3 days, you'll have the opportunity to participate in 88 workshops, the most ever, network with 2,167 traffic safety professionals, again, a conference record, and hear from 3 dynamic leaders whose resumes are beyond impressive. And you're in San Antonio during Fiesta, a celebration of the city's rich cultures that draws more than 3.5 million visitors annually. So welcome to the party with a purpose. I don't want to steal our first speaker's thunder, but all the funds raised by official Fiesta events provide services to San Antonio's citizens throughout the year, and I think that's a cause that we can all get behind. Another cause we all passionately support is zero. Zero crashes, zero injuries, zero fatalities on our roadways. Over the past 2 years, however, traffic fatalities have been going in the wrong direction, up, not down. Early results from 2017 indicate that we might be turning the corner, but it's still too soon to say. So just like my colleague Stephanie Shaw did last year in Charlotte during the opening ceremonies, I challenge each of you to share your ideas, your programs, your research, tap into each other's expertise, network like crazy, and identify what you can do and will do when you return home to ensure that we get to zero. Whether this is your first Lifesavers Conference, and by the way, I can't see out there, but by a show of hands, how many are here for the first time? Okay, terrific, welcome. Or whether you're a veteran like our own TxDOT Terry Pence, I urge you to leverage Lifesavers for all it's worth. The Lifesavers Conference is a nonprofit entity that simply couldn't happen without the support of sponsors and exhibitors. Our sponsors were displayed on the video screens as you entered the theater. We want to thank the businesses and organizations that are here supporting the conference and the work that you do. I encourage you all to take a moment over the next 3 days to say thank you to our sponsors and exhibitors, and join me now in giving them a round of well-deserved applause. Now, I've been in enough meetings with our keynote speaker today to know that she's probably sitting down there wondering, Shelley, when are you going to get around to the safety measures? Well, Debbie, right now. If you haven't already done so, please take a moment to locate the closest exit in the theater. I also encourage you to review the Convention Center emergency plan, which can be found on the Lifesavers app, and if you haven't done that, please download the Lifesavers app. In the event of an emergency, please follow the directions of the Convention Center staff. And also, if you see anything suspicious, report it to the Convention Center staff or to a member of the TxDOT staff, and they're the folks that are walking around in the dark green polo shirts. And if you haven't already done so, I also recommend that you acquaint yourself with your hotel's emergency exits and action plans as well. Now, let's officially begin this 36th Annual Lifesavers Conference with the presentation of our nation's colors and the singing of our national anthem. I'd like to invite the Color Guard, made up of officers from San Antonio Police and Fire Departments and Bexar County's Sheriff's Office to come forward.
Mark time. March. Left, right. Detail. Halt. Left. Face. Present. Arms. Oh, say, can you see
what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the hope of the brave.
That was United States Army Reserve Chaplain Major Lynn Burris Webler singing the national anthem, and it was what a rousing rendition. Thank you so much. So again, please join me in thanking the Color Guard and Major Webler, along with all law enforcement personnel in the audience. And you applauded before I had a chance to say that, but if we have, and I know we do, law enforcement in the audience, please stand so that we can thank you for your service to our community and to our nation. Our first speaker today was born and raised in San Antonio. She's Councilwoman Shirley Gonzalez, and she's the daughter of Mexican immigrants who started their own business right here in the heart of the city's west side. She holds undergraduate and graduate degrees in business from St. Mary's University and has put that education to work over the past 20 years, helping her family's business flourish. Now, in her third term on the City Council, she chairs the Comprehensive Plan Committee, whose focus includes transportation, housing, jobs, and economic competitiveness. Councilwoman Gonzalez also serves on the Bicycle Mobility Advisory Committee, as well as gives her time to many community organizations and institutions. Please join me in welcoming San Antonio's Mayor Pro Tem, Councilwoman Shirley Gonzalez.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to San Antonio. I hope y'all enjoyed the mariachis this morning coming in. I know I did. I'm born and raised here, but I never get tired of a mariachi welcoming us to an event and the beautiful dancers this morning. And I never get tired of the San Antonio hospitality. We are celebrating 300 years as a city, and so I hope you take advantage of some of the great things that are going on in our city. We were also recently designated a city of gastronomy, which means that we have great cuisine here. So also I hope you take a moment to visit some of our beautiful restaurants, our delicious restaurants, especially our Tex-Mex food that everybody raves about. And so please take some time while you're here to visit our city a little bit to the south, which is part of what I represent, Southtown, and also a little bit to the west, which is another area that I represent where we have the great authentic Tex-Mex food that everybody talks about. The mission reach goes all the way south to our historic missions, so take a moment, please, to visit our World Heritage space. It's really, really unique, almost nothing else like it in the country, and of course the Alamo that connects them all. So that was my plug for our beautiful city, so I hope you take some time while you're here. But I do think it's very fitting that I'm going to come before you all to welcome you all here today. As a councilwoman, when I first got elected, I was having a couple of neighbors, everybody independently, coming to me and saying, "Can't you do something about Culebra? My son was crossing the street and it was hit by a car and he was seriously injured." Another family member came to me and said, "My 80-year-old mother was walking to church and she crossed our Zamora and she was killed." And another person, and another, and another. And I thought, what is going on that so many people are dying just walking to their churches, walking to school, walking to our grocery stores? And so I just started to Google safe streets. I mean, it was really that simple. How did I learn about Vision Zero? And I saw that there was a conference in New York. And so my husband and I, who staffs me on a lot of communications and transportation related items, we said, let's just go and find out what they're doing in New York to make their streets safer. So I went to that conference and I learned all about it, and I came back and I put a proposal together and I circulated it with my colleagues and the mayor at this time. And I said, let's make San Antonio a Vision Zero city. That means we prioritize walking, cycling, transit, above and single occupancy vehicles, because we need to make our streets safer. We're killing our constituents. San Antonio had one of the highest rate of fatalities anywhere in the country. And so we took on this initiative, and slowly, little by little, San Antonio adopted a Vision Zero policy. And I was very proud of that, one of the first cities in the country to do so. We have, since we know that there is, many of you all know the 5 components of Vision Zero and safety initiatives, but part of that is the funding that we need. And I'm very, very proud that San Antonio, in our 2017 bond program, dedicated almost $50 million to complete streets in San Antonio. That's going to be transformative for this city. In 2017, we had a 37% reduction in fatalities on our roadways, and I'm very, very proud of that. And I think that deserves a round of applause. Because while they say, well, it's 1 year, that's not a trend, but at least it's a trend in the right direction. And we need to continue to dedicate all of our resources to making our streets safer for all road users. And one of the ways we do that is through complete streets. And I don't think I need to tell many of you all in the room, this issue of fatalities impacted our most vulnerable populations. It was primarily happening in poor communities, communities of color. It was happening to mostly elderly people and children. And so we know that if we design our roads for children and for seniors, for elderly people, we design safe streets for everyone. And that's what y'all are here to do, to design streets, to make them safe for everyone. And I also just want to make a little slight plug for the women in the room, because we know that as women, we are responsible for the safety of our families. We're responsible for the safety of our children. And they're all our children, they're all our families. And as we went through the presentation, we noticed that it was primarily women that were doing the safety discussion. All around the country, it's primarily women leading this effort on safety and on complete streets and on Vision Zero. And I just am really proud of the work that we're doing here in San Antonio and all of you all over the country to make our streets safer for anyone. Once we accept the fact that these are preventable deaths, for many, many years now, we've just accepted that it's okay to die in a car accident. It's okay to die walking to school or walking to church if you're hit by an automobile. But we know that we're changing that, and it's going to take a huge effort. We know it's a big lift, but we are making those steps every single day to make our streets safer. So thank you all so much for giving me the opportunity to come before you today. I hope you enjoy San Antonio as much as I do. I've been here my entire life, and every day I think it gets better and better, and one of the reasons is because of Vision Zero and making our streets safer. So thank you all. I hope you enjoy San Antonio. And so there's another thing that we do here in San Antonio. I'm going to say Viva Fiesta. And then sometimes we just say Viva, and then everybody shouts Viva. So I'm going to say Viva San Antonio, and you all say Viva, okay? So on 3, 1, 2, 3. Viva San Antonio! Viva! All right, y'all enjoy.
Thank you, Councilwoman Gonzalez, for that warm welcome. And we hope that your schedule will permit you to participate in some of the conferences. We actually have several Vision Zero workshops scheduled. And just as a Dallas side, I will say that we're working on trying to follow San Antonio and Austin's lead in getting a Vision Zero policy adopted. So, the Texas Department of Transportation is serving as our host for this year's conference, and here to extend the official TxDOT welcome is Laura Ryan, a member of the Texas Transportation Commission, which oversees TxDOT's statewide activities. An automotive industry executive with more than 25 years of experience, Commissioner Ryan is currently CEO of Purdy Motors USA, Costa Rica's exclusive Toyota distributorship with growing operations in the U.S., including 3 Texas-based dealerships. Prior to that, she was Vice President of Sales and Marketing with the GSFS Group and Chair of the Board of Texas Department of Motor Vehicles. She's a graduate of Penn State University and actively involved in local volunteer. We got some Nittany Lions over there. She's involved in local volunteer and charitable organizations, so please join me in welcoming Commissioner Laura Ryan.
Good morning, everyone. It is great to be here this morning. I will say that when you start a presentation like this, you often stop and think, well, what's the objective of what you're trying to share? Well, I will tell you, after getting in late last night through the rain and the fog, my objective this morning is to make sure I've had enough coffee that helps my technology function so that I can present something tangible to you all this morning. So bear with me, and we're going to hope that I have figured out the clicker. So I first off would like to thank the warm welcome this morning and the introduction. As was said, my name is Laura Ryan, and I am, and on behalf of the Texas Transportation Commission, TxDOT in the state of Texas, it's an honor to welcome you all here this morning to the 2018 National Lifesavers Convention. We are very proud to host you in this beautiful city of San Antonio, and for those that walked over this morning, it is a beautiful day. I'm inspired to see such an incredible turnout from all over the country with the sole purpose of discussing initiatives that keep our friends, families, and communities safe while on the road. There is no doubt that lives are saved every year because of efforts and dedication of individuals like each of you. Individuals committed to making our roads and our highways safer for public use. You will notice that TxDOT decided to use the shape of the rose window from the Mission San Jose Catholic Church for this year's Lifesaver logo and commemorative medal. Sculptured in 1775, this rose window is considered to be one of the finest examples of Baroque architecture in North America. While historians have been unable to validate the identity of the sculptor of this beautiful rose window, we do have stories of popular folklore, and I hope I get this right, I'm not from San Antonio, but which credits a Spanish carpenter, Pedro Huzar, with carving the famous monument. Legend has it that Huzar had sent money to his sweetheart Rosa so she could join him from Spain and Texas. However, sadly, Rosa's ship was tragically lost at sea, and Huzar, suffering from a broken heart, sculpted the window at the Mission San Jose as a symbol of his enduring love for Rosa. As you walk around the city, you will see the rose window everywhere. It is in business logos, on buildings, and is used on memorabilia. It is fitting, then, that the symbol for enduring love in San Antonio is also the symbol for this year's National Highway Safety Priorities. Safety is at the heart of TxDOT. In fact, you don't have to look any further than our mission statement to see that safety is the foundation of everything we do. It starts and ends with safety in mind. Today, I want to give you a quick overview of a few of our safety initiatives, as well as a few of our goals for the future. TxDOT's Traffic Safety Program pursues its mission of saving lives and preventing injuries through an extensive program of grants. In 2017, there were 288 traffic safety projects in our program, which included enforcement efforts, impaired driving mobilization, as well as various education and outreach campaigns. Enforcement efforts are a key component of traffic safety in Texas. Traffic safety and enforcement grants fund additional law enforcement throughout the state with the goal of reducing crashes that are caused by speeding, running red lights and stop signs, driving under the influence of alcohol or other drugs, and distracted driving, and failure to use safety belts or child passenger safety equipment. In 2017, TxDOT awarded traffic safety grants for 149 selective programs. These grants accounted for 5,400 DWI arrests, 54,000 seatbelt citations, and 290,000 speeding citations, and 21,000 distracted driving citations that also include numerous other citations and arrests. Impaired driving mobilization, or IDM as it's also known, is another critical factor for Texas traffic safety programs because it educates Texans on the dangers of driving under the influence of drugs or alcohol. Last year, TxDOT participated in the National Labor Day IDM efforts by pairing Plan While You Can Labor Day campaign with other traffic enforcement programs, which reimburse local law enforcement for overtime activities focused on the reduction of dangerous driving habits. As part of the alcohol-related media plan for this campaign, TxDOT utilized an interactive dodgeball game to educate the public about the efforts of alcohol on a person's reflexes. As participants control an on-screen avatar, virtual drinks make it increasingly more difficult for the player's character to dodge incoming dodgeballs. The game demonstrates how one drink, even one drink, can slow down reaction times. Because most alcohol-related crashes involve people between the ages of 18 and 35, TxDOT's dodgeball truck made several stops at local colleges around the state, various festivals, from mid-August through September, at a time of year when most people are celebrating the end of summer and college students returning to school. I'm not sure if that's the college students returning or people celebrating that the college students are returning, but either way, it's celebration. The dodgeball truck will actually be located in the exhibit hall today. So please stop by and take your chance, and we encourage you to play. In addition to enforcement and IDM efforts, TxDOT engages in a number of safety campaigns that span the calendar year. Talk, Text, Crash is a campaign that educates the public on the dangers of distracted driving. Plan While You Can educates the public on the dangers of impaired driving. And Be Safe, Drive Smart is a multi-focus campaign which includes general topics such as pedestrian safety, drowsy driving, school zone safety, speeding, winter driving, flash flooding, and energy sector traffic campaigns. These are just a few of the campaigns that drive our program. One of our most notable education outreach campaigns is Click It or Ticket. In 2017, the Texas Traffic Safety Program combined traffic safety enforcement grants with a statewide media campaign to once again participate to remind drivers to buckle up. According to Texas A&M Transportation Institute, only 76% of Texans were using their seatbelts when the Click It or Ticket campaign kicked off in 2002. As of June of 2017, we are very happy to say that that number has increased to 92%. In that same time period, the National Highway Safety Administration estimates that this campaign in Texas alone has prevented 95,000 serious injuries, saved more than $20 billion in economic costs, and most importantly, saved 5,473 lives. Click It or Ticket's importance is clear and will be continued as a TxDOT priority long into the future. Today, TxDOT continues to set its sights on safety improvements that can be made to Texas highways. Combined focus must be placed on reducing alcohol-related fatalities, motorcyclist fatalities, and distracted driving. Overall, alcohol-related fatalities decreased slightly between 2014 and 2016, despite an increase in the number of drivers on the road. However, still 1,438 alcohol-related fatalities occurred in 2016. So you can see that there's still much work to be done. Future program efforts will continue to include a combination of education, training, and enforcement initiatives that will further address our problem. Sadly, in 2016, we saw an increase in motorcyclist fatalities from the previous year. These 490 deaths accounted for 12.9% of all highway fatalities, despite motorcyclists accounting for less than 2% of the vehicles. And 54% of those motorcycles, and 54% killed on motorcycles, unfortunately, were not wearing helmets, a simple task that may have saved their lives. This year, TxDOT will use state and federal funding to place additional attention on motorcycle training, promoting the use of protective equipment, and enhancing education campaigns such as Share the Road. There is also plenty of work to be done when it comes to distracted driving. In 2016, 109,000 crashes related to distracted driving, which accounts for a 3% increase over the previous year. The passage of statewide texting and driving ban by the 85th legislature in 2017 brought with it a new and welcomed responsibility for the Texas Traffic Safety Program, which is to inform drivers about new law while continuing to educate and informing the traveling public about the dangers of all forms of distracted driving. As a matter of fact, in honor of April being National Distracted Driving Month, TxDOT announced the launch of its new Heads Up Texas campaign just a few weeks ago. This partnership with AT&T's It Can Wait campaign is a great example of the persistent efforts to raise awareness about the dangers of distracted driving. By continuing to focus on these safety initiatives, the Texas Traffic Safety Program will make serious headway in addressing these preventable fatalities, injuries, and crashes. I want to thank you again for joining us here in San Antonio at this year's Lifesaver Conference. It's been my pleasure to be here with you this morning to have an opportunity to speak with you about TxDOT's focus on traffic safety, and it's wonderful to see so many like-minded individuals gather to share ideas that will make our highways and our streets safer across the United States. I know your time here will be productive, informative, and have a little fun because it is Texas and it is San Antonio. It is also undoubtedly that you will share our goal of preventing injuries and saving lives. Thank you for your time this morning. Enjoy the conference and learn a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ryan. We certainly appreciate all that TxDOT has done to make this year's Lifesavers Conference the best yet. And we hope that your schedule will allow you to attend some of our workshops. So there's a lot of talk about zero and initiatives to get us there. Vision Zero, Towards Zero Deaths, the Road to Zero, as well as a tremendous focus on the automated vehicles. Are they the solution to the safety problems that plague our roadways, or just a pie-in-the-sky idea that is unlikely to come to fruition in our lifetime? Here to help make sense of all this and help us put our own respective efforts into context is a longtime friend of Lifesavers, Debbie Hersman. Debbie is the president and CEO of the National Safety Council, whose mission is to save lives by preventing injuries and deaths at work, in homes, in communities, and on the road through leadership, research, education, and advocacy. Before joining the National Safety Council, Debbie served as chair of the National Transportation Safety Board from 2009 to 2015. She was appointed as a member by President Bush in 2004 and reappointed to 2 additional 5-year terms by President Obama. Please join me in giving a warm Lifesavers welcome to our friend Debbie Hersman.
In 2016, 291 people died on our roads. What do you think would be a more acceptable number?
Acceptable? 70 maybe, probably 70.
Can you send 70? Actually, this is what 70 people looks like.
It's my family.
So now, what do you think would be a more acceptable number?
0. 0.
Good morning, everybody. Over 50 years ago, before I was born, we sent a man to the moon. President Kennedy challenged the nation to send a man to the moon and return them safely to Earth within a decade. There were a lot of people who thought that that was impossible, but we did it. Today, I don't have to tell this audience, but you know that motor vehicle crashes are one of the leading causes of preventable death in this country. And in fact, it is one of the leading causes when we talk about years of life lost, because it takes people at a young age out of turn and unexpectedly. So how do we shift safety culture? How do we collectively, like in that video that you just saw, get to the point where everyone thinks that 0 is the only number and that 0 is the right number and that 0 is attainable? Shelley shared with you that I worked for the National Transportation Safety Board before coming to the National Safety Council. And back in the 1990s, we were having a rash of aviation crashes. They put together a commercial aviation safety team, or CAST, to try to identify how to bring the commercial aviation fatalities that we were experiencing every year in our country down. They did this by bringing together government, manufacturers, operators, labor. Everyone sat around the table, they shared information, they identified issues that needed to be addressed, and they committed to doing it. A lot of people said that is going to be impossible. We have different carriers, pilots, mechanics, air traffic controllers. People are flying into airports that they've never visited. We have things that we can't control, like the weather. It's not going to be possible to make that reduction in a short period of time. Well, guess what? In the United States, we did make those reductions. And during the 10 years that I worked for the NTSB, we entered into the safest period that we have ever seen in aviation until last week. How many of you in the audience, raise your hands if you're familiar with what happened on Southwest Airlines last week? Pretty much everybody is raising their hands. This was the first fatality in US commercial aviation since 2009. And every single person in this room knows about it. When we talk about changing culture, it's about recognizing that that was a tragic fatality and it was preventable. But here in Texas, we haven't gone a day since November 2009 without a fatality on our roadways. Where is the interest from the media? Where is the outrage from the public? And where is the increased anxiety that every one of you who flew here felt when you paid attention to the safety briefing on your flight out like you probably hadn't for a while because of what happened last week. When you experienced turbulence on your way in and they told you to buckle your seatbelts, you did it. Why don't we care about all of the fatalities, over 40,000 of them, that occur every year on our roadways as much as we care about this? That's what it means to change culture. But they did succeed. The example is, in aviation, they did succeed. They went for 9 years with 0 fatalities, millions of enplanements, and they had 0 fatalities. The railroad industry at the turn of the century used to be one of the most dangerous places you could be. People were killed and maimed on the job every day in the US. Building the railroads, operating trains, maintaining the tracks, it was a deadly job. But 100 years ago, the railroad industry said, we have got to do a better job taking care of our own employees. They introduced new technology like automatic couplers. They committed to a safety culture. Management and labor worked together, and over the last 100 years, they went from having thousands of fatalities on the job, and this number was even higher if you look at 1900, thousands of fatalities on the job, to less than 20 every year on a sustained basis. How did they do it? Just like sending a man to the moon or achieving 0 in railroads or aviation, it's going to take leadership, it's going to take commitment of resources, and it's going to take new technology. So today, deaths on the railroad 100 years ago were the leading cause of workplace fatalities. But today, deaths on our roadways are the leading cause of workplace fatalities. Every business, every corporation, every company in the United States should care about this. It affects their bottom lines every day. So today we have 100 fatalities or more on any given day in the United States. So what is the right number? What's the right number today? What's the right number next year? What's the right number by 2050? So in 2016, with the support of the Department of Transportation, FHWA, FMCSA, and NHTSA, the National Safety Council partnered with them to create a coalition focused on 0. Through their leadership and through the hard work of our team, we actually have 675 members of the Road to Zero Coalition today in less than 18 months. Please raise your hand if you're a member of the Road to Zero Coalition. So I hope we will have over 700 members of the Road to Zero Coalition by the time you all leave Lifesavers. It's free to join. The only commitment is that you want to get to 0 fatalities by 2050 on our roadways. So we have 3 components to what we're working on to try to get to 0 by 2050. Building the coalition. This is a coalition of the willing. The second piece is giving grants. And the third is to build a vision for a long-term scenario for how to get to 0. So the first piece is really building that coalition. It is going to take representation from all sectors to help us get to 0. Bill, it's going to take the insurance industry. We know for us, it's going to take people like Shelley, who are working with hospitals and other organizations. We know it's going to take people like Pam and Jonathan and people who are leading associations and doing research. Every single one of us has something to bring. And when we just heard what TxDOT is doing and Commissioner Ryan shared with us their priorities, we all know that we have a role to play here. We're very grateful to have so many people be a part of this coalition, but in order to get to 0, it's going to have to permeate, and we're going to have to grow it. The second piece is the grants. Last year, we awarded $1 million from NHTSA in grants to 7 recipients. Last month, in March, we announced 11 more, $1 million from NHTSA and $500,000 from FHWA. We will continue to try to identify innovative efforts, research, and activities at a local level that we think can move the needle towards zero. The third piece is building that vision. Over the last year, we've worked with the RAND Corporation to create a document to really lay out that vision for what it's going to take to get to zero by 2050. We had an unprecedented number of organizations, scores of individuals gave their time and their talent to communicate what they thought was important and help us prioritize. This picture was taken at the Department of Transportation at our first meeting last January, and we had multiple meetings after that. I need to say thank you to a lot of people. And I can't say thank you to everyone who deserves it, but I do need to say thank you to a couple of people who have been with us since the very beginning of putting this together. First, Jeff Michael, I think Jeff is here, and Essie Wagner of NHTSA. It's been said that success has many fathers and failure is an orphan. Well, we are very fortunate to have many fathers and mothers in the Road to Zero Coalition and building success. Without Jeff's leadership, it absolutely would not have happened. And Beth Alejandri from FHWA, Beth was actually the first person that approached me about building a group focused on zero that really brought all of the organizations together. And Jeff Van Steenberg from FMCSA, again, an absolute pro, a true partner, background in the law enforcement community, but recognizing that we all are going to be in this together. There are so many people to thank, and I just can't thank everyone, but I do have to say thank you to Jane Terry and Susan Crotty. They are the 2 leaders at the National Safety Council who have absolutely made this happen. There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. So thank you for letting me recognize some of those amazing people who have helped us along the way. I want to say thank you to all of the NSC staff, because you all, this has been a labor of love, and I want to recognize Ann McCart, who is on our board of directors at the National Safety Council. Thank you for your guidance and leadership, Ann. Thank you all for allowing me to recognize others, and my apologies for each one of you that I didn't get to call out by name. Your work has made what we're doing possible. So the Road to Zero report is published this week, timed for this conference to be shared with others. The Road to Zero report, we worked with our partner RAND to get this done, and it focuses on the 3 things that we think will make the most impact to get us to zero by 2050. Double down on what works, accelerate technology, and prioritize safety. So let me unpack each one of those for you. The first one is advancing proven countermeasures. How many of you in this room, please raise your hand, if you are working today on advancing proven countermeasures? That should be a lot of you in this room. You should raise your hands. These are the things that we know work, the things that save lives. Take, for example, seatbelts. We know that states with primary seatbelt laws experience higher seatbelt use rate. In the United States, we have 90% observed seatbelt use for front seat passengers. But yet 50% of our vehicle occupant fatalities are unbelted. The U.S. trails our international counterparts with respect to seatbelt use rate. Every percentage point that we can increase that means thousands of lives can be saved. What's stopping us from implementing countermeasures that we know work? We have a lot of groups here that understand that speed kills. Of course, we've seen interstate speed limits go up over the last 2 decades. Virtually, those speed limits that have gone up since the 1990s have erased the gains that we've made with airbags. The Insurance Institute for Highway Safety conducted that study. Tens of thousands of lives have been lost because of increases in interstate speed limits. But when we heard the acting mayor talk this morning, she shared with us all of those fatalities that are happening in her community with people going to church and going to school. We know speed kills when it comes to vulnerable road users. So what can we do to address these risks and begin, just like the aviation industry did, to mitigate them, to eliminate them, to reduce them? These are the countermeasures that we know work. We have research, we have data, we have a patchwork system across this country where we don't have best practices in every state or every community. If we are going to get to zero, we have to double down on what works. I know FCA is a sponsor here of Lifesavers. They are our partner with Check to Protect. Getting to zero means addressing the big things and addressing the small things. 50 million vehicles in our country have an open recall today. You probably, many of you in this room, probably own one of them. It's really important for us to stay up to date on what's happening with our vehicles. That's 1 out of 4 cars in the country. If you have a vehicle and you know your VIN number, visit Check to Protect, and you know that you can get those recalls fixed free of charge. What are you waiting for? The second piece is accelerating technology. Shelley touched on this, and this is something that's really important. We cannot imagine getting to zero if we don't address technology improvements. And that means everything from what's available in cars today and up to and including fully automated vehicles by 2050. If we just had 3 technologies, this is according to Carnegie Mellon, 3 technologies in all cars today, automatic emergency braking, lane departure warning, and blind spot monitor, we could save 10,000 lives with those 3 technologies. They are commercially available today. The great news is that a couple of years ago, 20 auto manufacturers voluntarily committed to putting AEB on all makes and models by 2022. That means safety isn't just for those who can afford higher trim lines and more expensive vehicles. But guess what? We've got companies like Toyota. They've put automatic emergency braking, lane departure warning, and blind spot monitor standard on all makes and models starting in 2015. We have to accelerate consumer acceptance of the technology and consumers' comfort and knowledge with the technology. 40% of consumers have been startled or surprised by something that their car has done, according to the University of Iowa. That should not happen. We do not want people going to the dealership asking them to turn off safety technology because they don't understand how it works. But when we talk to technology, a lot of people think fully automated vehicles. Is that going to be something that our world is going to be seeing in the next few decades and by 2020? Absolutely. How many of you are familiar with this story? I would imagine most of you, right? So this was the fatality in Tempe involving the bicyclist. Are we going to have challenges? Are we going to have setbacks on the road to zero when it comes to technology? Absolutely. But there's a lot of talk, again, about this one fatality and not much discussion of the other 99 plus that occurred that day. We have to have confidence in the technology. It has to be proven. And when it fails, we have to have thorough investigations and be transparent about our findings. Consumer confidence is going to be super important for this technology to move forward. The safety community and the safety community support and acceptance and understanding is going to be really important for technology to move forward. But it's not going to be perfect. And we've seen that in all the other modes. I've talked a lot about aviation. I have a lot of experience with technology in aviation. Technology is the game changer, but it's not perfect. And you've got to keep the human being in the loop, particularly when we have partial automation. The third piece is creating a safe systems approach and prioritizing safety. So when we think about creating a safety culture, about what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, this is where all of you come in as ambassadors. You are going to lead this. It's going to come from this community. So when we think about risk and we think about safety, and I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands, but many of you probably got nervous when you flew to San Antonio for Lifesavers if you were on a plane. You had a thought about that mom who was partially ejected from the airplane. But how many of you sent a note, a text, an email to someone you love when you got in the taxi or the Uber at the airport? Because that was the most dangerous part of your trip. But we don't see the risks that we face every day. The most dangerous part of any of our days is probably when we get into a car, or we go for a run in the morning, or we walk across the street after sharing a meal with friends. But we don't recognize the risks, and we don't recognize the hazards. We have a safety culture that has become numb, and we have taken some cultural Novocaine where we don't care about these risks. And I'm not saying the people in this room, because I know you're as passionate about safety as I am, but as a society, we have got to change the way people think about road safety. So how do we change the way people think about road safety? We do it through DOTs, we do it through engineers, and we do it through the hierarchy of controls. For those of you who may be familiar with looking at that risk triangle, addressing design is right there at the top of the interventions that you can take. Because unlike vehicle technology that only protects the person in the car, or behavioral programs that change the individual, something like a roundabout has benefit for every single person who encounters it. It doesn't matter what car they drive and what technology they have. We are eliminating the high-speed T-bone intersection crashes that result in fatalities. And yes, there may be an uptick in fender benders as people learn how to negotiate a roundabout, but they won't be killed doing it. When we talk about prioritizing safety, we have to recognize that we are part of a big system. In that golden hour after a crash, we have real challenges making sure that everybody gets the medical treatment that they want. This number shocked me when Dia Gaynor of NASEMSO, who's on our steering group for Road to Zero, shared it with me. This is NHTSA's number. Over 40% of people aren't declared dead till they get to the hospital. They aren't killed on scene, but they die en route or later. So what can we do to make sure that we have better access and better provision of trauma care? So here's a map. Within an hour on the ground, only the people that live in these colored areas can get to a level 1 or level 2 trauma center within an hour on the ground. But what if we expand it to air access? That's great. We've got to know to dispatch the air transport right away, but we still have big parts of our country that are not covered, that don't have access to a level 1 or level 2 trauma center within an hour by ground or by air. It's also, I think, something that you all are very familiar with, recognition that this may be one of the reasons why it's less safe to be on the road in a rural environment. 19% of our population live in rural communities, but about 50% of our fatalities on the roadway occur in rural communities. What if they had better access to trauma care? So this year, the National Child Passenger Safety Board celebrates their 20th anniversary. And I know that you all are clapping because some of you, how many technicians do we have in the audience? Certified? Great. And many of you have used these services as part of your life, whether you're a parent or a grandparent. Let me tell you, this is something, when we talk about culture change, this is something that has changed within our lifetime, like smoking. Things can change. I remember as a child being in the back of a car with my sisters, and we weren't restrained. We weren't restrained by a seatbelt. They were all back in the, pushed back through the bite of the seat. But we also didn't have child safety seats. I have 3 boys. When I left the hospital, the discharge nurse would not let me carry my child out in my arms. My husband had to bring in the infant carrier. We had to strap our sons in, and she wanted to make sure we did it correctly, and carry them out of the hospital. When we talk about culture change and how it's going to take all of us, pediatricians, labor and delivery, child safety technicians, Safe Kids, the National Child Passenger Safety Board setting standards. There are so many people that are involved in this. Law enforcement, fire departments, community programs, manufacturers donating these seats. It's no surprise that we have a higher use rate for child passenger seats than we do for seat belts. But we change culture in a generation. From the time that I was a child to the time my children grown up, they have never known a life unrestrained. We can make a difference. That chart that I showed you earlier about the leading cause of death for children, that number that starts at 5 now, it actually motor vehicle crashes used to take our infants and our toddlers. We have been able to move motor vehicle crashes down on that list. We have got to have the same resolve to move motor vehicle crashes down the list throughout the course of people's lives. The National Child Passenger Safety Board celebrates their 20th anniversary, and I know there's going to be a lot of activities this week while we're here. And so when we look at the lives that are saved, and this is something each one of you should celebrate, over 11,300 lives have been saved through the use of child safety seats. That is a huge number and a great number, something that you should all be proud of. So how do we get to zero? I hope today I've given you a little thumbnail of how we're going to get to zero. We do have the reports available in our booth, 711. That one's easy to remember. But it's going to take all of us. It's going to take behavioral changes. It's going to take good education, good laws, and good enforcement, doubling down on what works. It's going to take accelerating technology. It's going to take creating a safe systems approach and really instilling a safety culture so that we prioritize safety. in our resources and funding, in our decisions, in our laws, and in our own daily choices and behaviors. But the most important is that picture in the middle. This was taken at our last quarterly Road to Zero meeting. They are all webcast. These meetings take place in DC, but the last meeting we had 150 people in person, and we had over 400 on the webcast. So I encourage you to join the Road to Zero Coalition if you'd like to be a part of it. We have great speakers and great material. But the picture in the middle is really about us. If we don't believe that we can get to zero fatalities by 2050, we won't get there. This group, the people in this room, have to believe it. Just like taking a man to the moon seemed impossible, it was done in less than a decade. And that man went to the moon before I was even born. And I'm not that young. So what are we going to do to make sure that we know how to get to zero? And let's see. So I think if I could ask Youssef and the team in the back, if you could roll the video for me, please.
Imagine her world in the year 2050. A colony on Mars, bloodless surgery, clean, sustainable energy. The future makes almost anything possible, including zero roadway deaths.
I am confident we can do this together. We must. And the groundwork that this organization, this coalition has built together over the years will be a key part of that.
3 strategies will lead the way. Countermeasures that work have already saved thousands of lives. We will double down on what we know works.
We shouldn't forget about tried and true non-tech interventions that are out there also ready to be used.
In 30 years, from 1994 to 2014, miles traveled increased 35%, yet traffic fatalities decreased by 5%. Countermeasures work. Safety belts and airbags, DUI checkpoints and laws, red light cameras, traffic roundabouts, and child restraint systems. The Road to Zero will accelerate the development of advanced driver assistance systems, or ADAS. Human drivers are fallible. Drivers are tired. Drivers are impaired. Drivers are distracted. Smart machines are not. New ADAS technology is being added to new cars every day at all price levels. Car makers have voluntarily agreed to add AEB, automatic emergency braking, to all new cars by 2022.
There's really a remarkable number of technologies that are really coming way down in price. So camera technologies that can have special, essentially computer vision that look out ahead of you and can detect stopped cars and threats, pedestrians that are about to cross in front of you.
Human behavior is such that only technology can override the poor choices that people make when they're operating a vehicle.
Culture and behaviors can change.
We can seek to make safety a priority within our personal lives, within our businesses, corporations, associations, our neighborhoods, schools.
50 years ago, people freely littered. Millions smoked in public. People can change. The Road to Zero requires a rigorous adoption of safety culture.
Safety needs to be a priority. It needs to be part of our culture.
Que uno cree es posible hacerlo.
Today, her future is already on the road to zero. The map is clear. Evidence-based solutions are being funded. The journey has begun.
Achieving zero roadway fatalities is not impossible. It just hasn't been done yet. This is our generation's moonshot. So I hope you feel inspired to be able to be a part of that moonshot. And I hope to count all of you as the hidden figures behind getting to zero when we get there. Hopefully we will live long enough to see it. I want to close by sharing one last thing with you. I've been on the road a lot, away from my team. We're based in Chicago to do some Road to Zero work. And I received this email from one of my employees this past week. I'm sharing this with you because it's all my husband and I have been able to think about the past 24 hours. If anyone thinks getting to zero fatalities on the roadway isn't important or they can't comprehend it, it's because for them, it has not yet become personal. Yesterday, my husband completed his emissions testing on his vehicle. On his way home, he was stopped at a north-south red light. An Escalade was stopped across the intersection at the same red light. A young man on a motorcycle had the green light and was proceeding east-west through the intersection. For some reason, the Escalades started going through as if the north-south light had turned green, even though it hadn't. I apologize for this next part because it is very graphic, but it depicts the horror of what happened to that young man and his family. The front tire of the Escalade hit the motorcycle. The man's chin hit the hood, and his body was catapulted about 30 feet into the air and forward. His body landed right in front of my husband's vehicle. My husband got out and leaned over the young man. He looked to be about 19 years old. The young man was wearing leathers and a helmet, doing it right by taking precautions. Under the helmet, he wore prescription eyeglasses. His eyes were open. He took one gasp for air, and then his eyes closed and he was gone. My husband said he will never forget the sound of the impact or those eyes. In that moment, for my husband, it became personal. We all need to look out for each other on the roadways and continue to promote awareness. I know you know this, but I wanted to let you hear one more person tell you that what you're doing matters. And I want to be one more person to tell each of you what you're doing matters. Keep up the great work. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. I was, as you were speaking, I was thinking about the video that you showed early, and I think I've seen it hundreds of times now, and I still get emotional when I see it. And I'm thinking I was going to say something about that video, and then you ended with that story. And so, thank you all for what you do every day to save lives. Speaking of heartfelt emotion, it's Lifesavers' tradition to call attention to a preventable traffic safety problem. The mission moment serves not only to remind us of why we do the work we do and why it's so important, but it's also to give a face to the thousands of people who lose their lives in traffic-related incidents every year in our country. On May 3rd, 2012, 7-month-old Luke Jacobson died of heat stroke. Since 2008, more than 800 children have died due to vehicular heat stroke. That's nearly 40 children every year. And unfortunately, in states like Texas and other southern states, we see more of that because of the heat here. We can help prevent this from happening to another family through preventive measures that include education and, like Debbie mentioned, technology. Here to share Luke's story is Fort Bend County, Texas Constable Trevor Nels. Please join me in welcoming Trevor Nels.
Good morning. It is great to see law enforcement well represented at this year's conference, and I thank you. My name is Trevor Nels, and I serve as the Precinct 4 Constable of Fort Bend County, Texas, which is southwest Houston. It is a distinct honor and privilege to address you this morning regarding a subject that demands a collaborative approach for a solution involving automobile manufacturers, engineers, safety seat manufacturers, elected leaders, and safety advocates, to name a few. I hope over the course of the next 4 days, each of you, as passionate professionals, develop a sound strategy aimed at significantly reducing the number of children dying in hot vehicles. As a 27-year law enforcement professional, May 3rd, 2012 is a day I will never forget. For most law enforcement officers or first responders, certain calls for service or personal experiences will stick with you for a lifetime. In this specific instance, an infant was deceased. And as many of you who are first responders, scenes involving children are the most difficult. Approximately 3 years later, I was sitting in my office and I came across a news story detailing another case in which a parent left a small child in a vehicle, resulting in death. This brought back memories of my experiences a few years earlier. I immediately felt a need to help in some way to make a difference, to educate parents of young children of the dangers of leaving young children in hot vehicles. My first step was to visit the Jacobson home to ascertain their interest in joining me in creating a public service announcement. I walked to the door, fairly uncomfortable, not sure exactly what to say. A woman answered the door, and I awkwardly introduced myself and asked to speak to Mr. Jacobson. She identified herself as Leland's mother and informed me he was not home, but offered to leave him my name and contact number. Now keep in mind, I'm in full police uniform. She inquired as to the reason for my visit, and I explained to her that I was the first officer on the scene the day that Luke died, and I felt the need to do something to ensure it does not happen again, and I wanted to speak to Leland. Almost immediately, her eyes watered, and a tear rolled down her cheek, and deep inside I thought, what have I done? I have torn open a wound that probably has not healed, nor will it heal. I left and began questioning my judgment, not sure if I would ever receive a call from Mr. Leland Jacobson. A few days later, I received a call from Mr. Jacobson. I explained to Leland my intent to develop a public service announcement and requested his help. He and I spoke for several minutes, and what I remember most of what he said, quote, "I need to get out of the boat." I will let Leland explain that to you. Over the next few months, following several discussions and informal meetings, what transpired is heartwarming and courageous. Leland and his wife Deanie agreed to participate in a PSA and also a press conference. The end result was the production of a 30-second and 60-second PSA to include a video in which Leland and Deanie described that tragic day and their love for Luke. Additionally, Clear Channel billboards in several states displayed safety messages pertaining to children in vehicles in conjunction with Jeanette Fennell, kidsincars.org, and I know Jeanette's here, Look Before You Lock. Allow me to highlight the 60-second PSA funded by Fort Bend County Law Enforcement. Please play the video.
Every year, almost 40 children die of heat stroke after being forgotten in a vehicle. In 70-degree weather, it takes only minutes for the inside of a car to heat up like an oven. At 104 degrees, heat stroke begins, followed by loss of consciousness.
Yeah. Should go an hour and a half or so.
Leave without your child, live without them forever. Look before you lock, brought to you by Kids in Cars.
In closing, this experience, though initially tragic, has enriched my life, and I thank the good Lord for it. I also thank the Jacobsons for their courage to want to help, to make a difference. Leland and I have formed a lifelong friendship, and I encourage him to continue his efforts. If I may draw your attention to the video screen for the Jacobson story.
Everyone loved Luke, and everyone wanted to spend as much time with Luke. I remember not wanting to go to work and just take pictures of Luke and play with Luke before school. It was tough because, you know, we wanted to spend as much time with him as possible. He wasn't even one yet. The morning was different. I had a different work engagement I had to go to at a hotel.
Well, I had left work a little early because our other son had a baseball game, and when I got to the babysitter's house, no one answered the door. And I called Leland, and I asked him, I said to him, "Do you have Luke?" And he said, "Why would I have him?" And I said, "You dropped him off this morning?" And then all he said was, "Oh God," and he hung up the phone.
I hung up and ran out there and discovered Luke in the car.
And then I called my neighbor that lives across the street, and I asked him, I said, I need you to go outside and check on Leland right now. And I could hear him open his door, and I could hear Leland screaming.
And at that point I knew I really messed up, and it's going to be the moment I regret the most my whole life.
Please join me in welcoming Mr. Leland Jacobson.
Hello, my name is Leland Jacobson. I'm Luke Jacobson's father. Thanks to all you brave men and women out here that try to raise awareness and put your life on the line every day to serve your communities and our nation. I sincerely thank you for your service. Unlike most speakers at a typical conference, I'm not really thrilled to be here today. The reason I'm here is because of the worst day of my life. May 3rd, 2012 has permanently scarred me and my family. The event of that day, I will have to live with the rest of my life. It's the day I failed my family miserably. I dropped off my eldest two children, Lauren and Nathan, at school, and then somehow totally forgot Luke. My youngest was still with me that day. It was a change of routine that day, taking Luke to a sitter. I didn't know then, like I know now, that a change of routine is one major cause of these tragedies. That particular day, my schedule was different than the normal routine. I was attending a conference at a local hotel, occupied by all the distraction of this world, listening to a podcast and thinking about how my day was going to go. I failed miserably. The most important thing, my son Luke. Losing a child has been the toughest challenge that my wife and I have ever experienced. Being responsible and the guilt for losing that child is overwhelming at times, to say the least. Without my faith in the Lord and my family extended me grace, especially my dear wife, Deanie, I could have easily not be here today. My hope is now to try to raise awareness and honor my son Luke, so nobody else has to live with the awful feeling of having tragically left their child behind, like I do every day. You see, before this horrible day, I would have been the first one saying, this could never happen to me. Guess what? It can happen to anyone. In today's world, we're constantly distracted with all the types of things, and since our precious children have been moved to the back seat, this has become a bigger and bigger problem. Huge thanks to Trevor. He got me out of the boat to involve in raising awareness. So as I fix my eyes on all of you today, all I see is hope. Hope that your relentless efforts to talk to your communities to prevent this from happening again to anyone. Hope that technology improves and I never see the headlines about another tragedy of another child lost. Hope that families never have to seek therapy because of the trauma that has caused them. Hope that one day that we look back a year with 0 children lost in hot cars. Thank you all for all your efforts moving forward and talking about this topic with people that won't listen. Many with the mindset that this only happens to bad parents. Please continue to tell them it can happen. It can happen to anyone. And God bless you all, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Leland. Thank you, Deanie. We're all human. Thank you for sharing your story. You have our heartfelt thanks for turning your pain into prevention. And it's our hope that no other family in Texas or throughout this country has a child die from heat stroke. Each of us can help by reminding parents, grandparents, caregivers, and others who transport young children to always look in the back seat before exiting the vehicle. But here's the really important thing. We're all human. We're all good parents. We can also advocate for technology that requires new cars to include a device for detecting children in the back seat and warning the driver of the presence after the vehicle has been turned off. But before I close this morning's plenary session, I have a few introductions to make and a few housekeeping items to share with you. First, I want to call your attention to the big screens. I hope they're going to put it up on the screen. Please join me in congratulating the 2018 Child Passenger Safety Instructor of the Year, Karina Ortiz, a community relations specialist with the Bakersfield, California Police Department, and the Child Passenger Technician of the Year, Chris Morris, with UNC REX Healthcare in Raleigh, North Carolina. Karina and Chris were honored yesterday at the CPS Education session here in San Antonio. Also, you heard Debbie mention, this is the 40th anniversary of the first child passenger safety law, which was passed in Tennessee, and the 20th anniversary of the National Standardized Training Curriculum for CPS technicians. Go ahead and applaud. And because I am one of the older people in the audience, I remember both of those events. I'd also like to ask that our 48 Lifesavers Traffic Safety Scholars stand and be recognized. These young men and women from across the country and the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. They were recognized yesterday at a reception, and each were selected through a competitive application process, and it awarded a scholarship to help defray the costs of attending this conference. If you have any interest, if any of you are students out there, please see one of the Lifesavers Planning Committee members or someone like that and learn more about this scholarship. Finally, if you downloaded the Lifesavers app, because if you haven't, please do. It gives you access to the complete conference program and enables you to obtain alerts about events going on over the next 3 days. The app is also where you'll find the workshop evaluation. You'll be hearing more about this in each session. We have the workshop evaluation slide. Your feedback is critical to us in the planning process, so please, please take a few moments after each workshop to submit your evaluation. Finally, whether you're a new or a longtime Lifesavers attendee, we're so glad you're here, and we hope that you have a terrific conference. I encourage you to join with the planning committee. Look for the people like us who have the pins on our lapels, and tweet about your experience using the hashtag Lifesavers2018. That concludes our opening ceremonies. The first workshop begins at 10:30. Please enjoy the rest of your day and the next 3 days in San Antonio.